Hi guys, and welcome back to another video in DearPiggy's Java tutorial. So in this video, we're going to be working on how to print out every separate item in our arrays using for loops and for each loops. This is going to be a tough video, especially for our for loops. So it's going to be a little bit confusing. That's okay. As long as we understand most of it, we can watch the video over and over, do some practice, and it should make a lot more sense. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So previously, this is a continuation of our previous video. So go ahead and watch that one about arrays. I'm going to get rid of everything except for just the creation of our two arrays. Okay, so remember when I showed you guys and I said that system.out.println, cool animals, just printing out the array name like we print out a variable, as you'll see in a second, that's not going to work. All right, I have an error here. Because I said println instead of println. Right, so let's run it again and you'll see that it's going to give me something weird. It's going to give me java.lang string blah 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 blah, and not something that is pretty understandable for humans. So we are going to try and print out every separate item on its own line. So this is how we're going to do that. We are going to be using a for loop. So remember, we have for with our 3 statements, and then we have our action. So this is kind of complicated, guys. We're going to set an integer to be I, and we're still going to make it less than something, and we're still going to increase I as we go on. But this time, I is not just going to be any random integer. It's going to start from 0, but it's not going to mean any random 0. It's going to be index. So this is going to be our index number. So the I that you see here, the integer that you're working with, is actually the index of your array. So hopefully this should make a lot more sense. If you can always keep in mind that your I, or whatever variable you're using, is the index of your array, then everything will make sense. But if you think of I as just an ordinary number, it's not going to make any sense at all. Okay, so let's come in and let's try and do this, okay? This is a little bit hard to understand, I get it, but we're going to try our best. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create our statements. So for int I is equal to 0, I is less than cool animals dot length. You're gonna see why I did this in a second. I plus plus. So we learned about the length last time. It's just going to find us the length of our array. So in this case, remember, I highly recommend you watch our for loop video, but int I is equal to 0 is kind of like our starter, what should happen before the code block gets executed. And we're going to system.out.println cool animals I. Okay, so obviously, this is our starter variable like I was talking about, and this is going to stop when I is going to be equal to the length of cool animals, which in this case is 3. And we're going to increase I by 1 every time we come through. So let's explain what the thought process is. So we know from our previous video experience, that when we do something like this, it means that we're going to be accessing the certain index. So this item, every single item in our array here has an index. Blobfish is 0, pangolins is 1, giant salamander is 2. So by using I here, we're going to assume if I is 0, then we're going to get blobfish. If I is 1, we're going to get pangolins. If I is 2, it's going to be giant salamander, because I is our index, right? Okay, so first we set I equal to 0. So then 0 is less than 3, because the length of this is 3. And so then we print out 0. We replace I with 0. Now, what is the 0th index of cool animals? It's blobfish. So blobfish gets printed out. Then we add 1 to I and we get 1. So 1 is less than 3. The first index of cool animals is pangolins. We print pangolins out. Add 1 to 1, we get 2. 2 is less than 3. So then we print out the second index, which is giant salamander. Now, that's it. That's all we have. However, it's going to run through one more time. We add 1 to 2, and we get 3. Is 3 less than 3? No. So we stop here, which is perfect because it's not like we had any more items left. So on purposely, we did less than cool animals by that length because only this way can we stop before we run out of options. Right, so this was us using a for loop to solve things out. We assigned an integer, we gave it the statements, we set it less than the length of the array, and that integer was basically our index, okay? So looks like Replit doesn't want to load, so let me reload it for us. So yeah, hopefully that made some sense. I think the most confusing parts are why we used I. Remember, I is the index. We're printing the index, and remember, the 0th index would be the first item. The first index would be the second item, and the second index would be the third item. Oof, that was hard to say, but oh, looks like Ripple's not working with me today. But yeah, and the second thing to remember is the dot length part. As you'll notice in my answer here, it looks like it's having me edit. Let me reload it again. The length part is essentially on there purposely because length is how many items are in our array, right? And since our array, we can't go overboard, we can't have too many times in the loop, we have to make sure that this stops before it runs way too many times. And since the reason why we made it less than the length is because we're using indexes. Since index start with 0, by the time it was equal to length, 3 would actually in this case be 4, right? So because the third index would actually be the 4th item, and since we do not have a 4th item, there is no way that we can make I equal to the length. So I always has to be less than the length. Just something to remember. Go ahead and run our code, and let's see now. Blobfish, pangolins, giant Chinese salamander, Chinese giant salamander. Okay, so there we go. We've printed all of these out separately and individually. Let's go ahead and do it again for this one. For system.out.println, fave numbers, and then let's use J this time. Remind me not to get my I's and J's messed up. Okay, so int J is equal to 0 because we always want to start with the 0th index. So J, we always want it to be less than the length. So fave numbers dot length. It has to be less than the length because we don't want it to go overboard. Then we're going to add 1 to J every single time to increase the index. So run it again, and we will see that we get an error. Yikes. Okay, not the best thing to start off with, but let's see, where is my error? Okay, so our error is actually because I was not being careful and I didn't realize the variable name, our array name, was numbers. So I put number, and obviously it doesn't recognize that, so we have to add in an S. So now it should work. So when we run our code, you'll see here we get 3, 5, 7, 9, 10, 11, 9, 10, 13. Every single item in our array gets printed out on its own line. And this is because when we first come in, J is 0. And since we know that it's an index, the 0th index is 3. So 0 is less than the length, which in this case is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so 5. So 0 is less than 6. We print out the 0th index, which is 3. And we add 1 to J to get 1. So 1 is less than 6. Print out the first index, which is 5. We keep on doing that until we get to 5. So 5 is less than 6, so we print out the 5th index, which is 13. Remember 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we print out 13, and then we add 1. So then J is now equal to 6. So 6 is not less than 6. 6 is equal to 6. So this for loop is no longer true, and we exit. Okay, so I know that was quite a bit to handle. It was kind of confusing, but again, like I said, watch this again, do it yourself a couple times, watch the video another time, talk about it, think about it, sleep on it, and then maybe it'll make a little bit more sense, okay? The next type that I want to introduce is the for each loop. This is very easy. Extremely easy. You don't have to do anything hard, essentially. It's just the reason, and there's really no explanation. It's just kind of the way it was made. To print everything out, in fact, I would use this method. I would just do string I colon puppy system not out to print line I. So what am I doing here? I'm essentially doing a for each loop. So it's exactly the same as a for loop, except we don't use any statements. We do for data type of X. So data type for a string array would be string, for an integer array would be int. Then we give it a variable. Now this variable can be whatever we choose. It can be A, B, C, D, E, or Z even, okay? So anything. Colon array name. Simple as that, and then you print out your variable, and then everything in your code gets printed out. Easy, simple, doesn't really make sense. Okay, so that is why people would choose to use this way, because even though this way is kind of confusing, we talked through the logic, you can come up with it. But this one, if you forget how to do it, well, there's really no way to remember again, okay? But I'm going to walk you through this. So, we start off with the data type, and since every one of these items is a string, it's string. Let's give it the name I, colon, now we want to use the name, so cool animals, because that's the name of our array. Then we are going to print out the value of I, and voila, we are done, okay? So this is all you have to do for each loop. You do the data type, the variable, name, the colon, and your array. So as you'll see, we have blobfish, pangolins, and Chinese giant salamander. If I wanted to, let's see here, I want to find another one. So, frigate bird. So let's do, comma, frigate bird. And then when I run my code, this should be a comma. When I run my code, you'll see that we have all of them. Come on now, Java. All of them, including frigate bird, okay? So this is easy peasy lemon squeezy using the for each loop by, in this case now, we moved on to the next case, we're gonna use integers. So for int j, we're gonna use a different variable, fave number. So remember, we gave the data type of things that were supposed to come out, which in this case were integers, because this is an integer array. And then we gave the variable name and then the name of the array. Okay, then we print out j, we print out each of these variables, and then we are going to get an error. Wow, okay. Same problem as before, it's favorite numbers, not favorite number. Okay, so run our code, and then we get 3, 5, 7, 9, 10, 13. So everything gets printed out. Okay, so this was a challenging video, but I think we can do it. We learned how to access, how to print out the items in our for loops. The first way we did was the logical way. We learned every single step of the way by setting our variable in the for loop in the statement to be the index, and then we went on from there. Then we learned about the for each loop, which is very simple and easy to print out these items. Okay, so that's it for this week's videos. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks, guys.